You're listening to LA Talk Radio.
You're listening to Female Filmmakers Fuse with Alexa Polar, only on LA Talk Radio.
Thank you, and thank you for listening to Female Filmmakers Fuse. I'm your host, Alexa Polar, with
Robin Pabello. Hello, happy Sunday.
Before we get started, if you want to call in today, the number is 818-602-4929. Again, that's 818-602-4929. Robin, where can they find us?
You can find it at any of your favorite streamings, like iTunes or Google Play. And or you can listen live via the app, LA Talk Radio. We're on Channel 2 every Sunday, live from noon to 1. Or if you want to, you can also find us on YouTube. Alexa likes to post, a little video with, our conversations come Sunday.
Yeah, so, on YouTube, you can find us under Female Filmmakers Fuse. Don't forget to subscribe and ring that bell.
Ring that bell.
Ring that bell. Okay, today's guest is Jennifer. I'm sorry.
Tocquigny.
Jennifer Tocquigny. Hi, Jennifer. Are you there?
Yes, I am.
Sorry, we lost you for a second
there. How are you
guys? We're good. How are you? You're in. Where are you? Hang on. I was trying to.
I'm in Texas right now, but I'll be back to LA later today.
Okay. Are you originally from Texas, or are you there for filming, or?
Yeah, no. My sister just got married, so
congrats.
Just spent a weekend with the family, but I'll be back to LA in a jiffy.
Okay. And are you originally from LA, or what's your background?
So I was actually born in Texas, but grew up all over the U.S. Lived in Florida, North Carolina, New Hampshire, and spent the most of my upbringing in Colorado, and then was in school in Alabama, and then came to California. So I've kind of gone all around the country.
Wow, that's amazing. So what led you to be jumping from state to state?
So my dad, he worked at Frito-Lay with Procter & Gamble, and so depending on the marketing campaigns that he was working on, we kind of jumped around the country. But yeah, no, I think it actually helped. I think a lot of times I was envious of children that were, growing up in the same communities their entire lives. But I think having moved around so much, it allowed us, my sister and myself, to be able to be more friendly and be more open and, have more confidence in meeting new friends. And so I think it kind of, in the end, ended up shaping us into better people. So
excellent. That's so great. And you're a filmmaker. What are you, a writer, producer, director? What is it that you do?
Mainly produced.
Okay.
I originally started working in development on the narrative side, and then had taken a vacation to teach at an orphanage in Kenya, and the school that I was working at they wanted a music program, and so when I came back to LA, was introduced to two women working on a documentary about a recycled orchestra, and originally approached them to bring that project back to the school in Kenya. And they were like, we're not going to be expanding until the film is done, but you can help us with the film in the meantime. And that's when I first got exposed to documentaries and ended up helping them with the documentary, and then got totally hooked. And the rest is history now. And ended up from that project, starting to work on documentaries on the side. And it wasn't until last April that I was still working in development, and one of the documentaries was shooting in Nicaragua, and they were like, okay, here's your chance. There's 3 seats left on this puddle jumper to fly into the rainforest and spend a month with this indigenous tribe.
Whoa.
And it was a Tuesday night, and I was like, I have, reading to do and work to do. And I was like, oh my gosh, we have to go with our gut. And in that moment, I booked my flight, and then 2 days later left my job, and then flew into the rainforest on a puddle jumper, and the indigenous tribe picked us up in their hollowed out canoes, and we rode 4 hours into the rainforest and set up camp.
I think so. This is okay. So we lost you there for just a split second.
Oh, sorry.
You said you got to the rainforest, and then what happened?
Yeah. So this indigenous tribe came and picked us up in hollowed out canoes, and we rode into the rainforest and swung hammocks and lived off the land for a month. And we're shooting the documentary. And since then, I just kind of thought I really should be doing. I love physical production, and
so Jennifer,
I was always putting on the side. Yes,
it cuts off every so often. But I heard that you loved physical production, which is great. So you're a producer that's on set, on location, field producer for documentaries.
Yes, essentially, yes.
Okay.
So kind of run it again, and I think for documentaries especially, you kind of have to wear many hats. So depending on the project, I'm running sound through being an AC, so it kind of, depending on the size of the production, larger productions, you obviously have more crew, but you kind of have to be a jack of all trades in this field.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's amazing that you guys lived off the land for a month. I mean, that is a lifetime experience.
I'm just,
yeah, exactly.
I think it's amazing that you were working at a orphanage in Kenya. How was that? I mean, I know that's totally unrelated, but I think that's amazing. Not a lot of people do that or have the opportunity to do that. How did you come into that?
So I'd always, I traveled, my parents raised us, they traveled with us a lot as children. And so before Airbnb, whenever we would travel as a family, they would try to find, individuals in communities, and, we'd be living on a farm for a week, or, renting an apartment in Italy, or, just kind of really getting into the culture. And my dad had taken me to Africa when I was younger, and I really wanted to go back, but unfortunately with a lot of traditional jobs, 9-to-5 jobs, you maybe get a week of vacation. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to be super adventurous and do a week, do 1 week of, or 2 weeks, max, but do a 2-week stint in Kenya. And I'd found an orphanage that was looking for teachers. They were on a teacher strike there. And I was like, I can teach. And so showed up, and, it was pre-K through 9th grade, and there were no teachers because they had gone on strike. And so I was like, okay, I taught math through English I taught a theater class, which, that's not my background, but, and it was so much fun. I loved it. And it's, it really is interesting how, if you get 5 days of vacation, what are you going to do with it? And really, you can do more than sitting on a beach, and I think that was something where I really wanted to, really broaden my horizons. And, the orphanage was in the Kawangware slum. And so, we didn't really have running water, and it was, but that, I think I like being exposed to, developing countries and, other places, not typical to the traditional vacation. And so I think that also kind of played into the eventual placement of me working in documentaries where, you're thrown into environments that are pretty harsh sometimes, or, uncomfortable situations, and you really have to be able to roll with the punches and be able to just be completely spontaneous and go with the flow a lot of times.
So you volunteered 2 weeks of your time to go to Kenya just by chance and finding this orphanage. Why were the teachers on strike?
Well, it was just, I think it was, just kind of like typical, in LA, there's writer strikes and things like that. And it was interesting because it was the teachers were on strike and also doctors were on strike. And so it was this weird period of time where, but also, you can't go to school. So it was a really, it kind of worked out. And then in doing so, then, found out that the school wanted the music program. And so because of that trip, ended up falling into documentaries. So I kind of owe it all to that one trip. So
that's amazing. I know that with documentary filmmaking, because that's sort of how I started as well, sort of. I started first as writing, and then when I started physically filming or being on set, it was more with documentary filming. I know, and I think maybe you could vouch for this, or maybe you have a different perspective, but I find it normally when in documentary filmmaking that you go in with a certain perspective, you go in with a certain goal, like this is what I want to tell, this is what I want to capture or hope to. And then as you're finding different people to interview and get that story, you end up finding things that stand out more, or your story changes slightly, shifts a little bit, your perspective shifts a little bit. Do you find that happens? Because with documentary filmmaking, you end up learning as you go as well. So that's why I love it, because you learn so much in the process on what the subject matter is. And you learn a lot more than what you were expecting to, because you thought you were going to go out there and show people this is what this is about. And then all of a sudden you find something even more so. Do you think that's true for the most part? Would you say that's true?
Oh, 100%. And I think that's what the beauty of documentaries is, that you're going into a project without a script. It's not a lot of times a narrative, and you're capturing life happening before your eyes. And so, you have to be patient with the subject, but I think as it is evolving, the factors are changing, whether it's laws or human conditions, or, you're guaranteed to have your perspectives change. But, but I think, I think you come out of it, as a different person, hopefully for the better, but you have a deeper understanding of a world that you really weren't exposed to before. But I think, it just depends on how you look at it, because I think working on, the narrative side or unscripted, it's like, you kind of have to choose, whether to allow yourself to absorb, right, what's going on anyway. But I think with documentaries, it's been really fascinating how, depending on the project, one project I'm working on is a political piece, and it's like, you go in thinking, oh, this is who I am, this is my opinion, and then you really surprise yourself by the end by, you're like, oh my gosh, like I've, not only has this project evolved, along the way, and the subjects and things, but like yourself too, which I think is so cool, is that you're ever changing and ever evolving, and the films kind of help project that in the future.
Yeah, I once worked on this project. It's still kind of in there working, sort of. It's about autism, and I remember when I started, the focal point was on autism in general, and we met up with this lady, this incredible expert, yes, and she was just amazing, and we interviewed her, and she talked about what she called the glass child, correct?
Yes, which you also made a spin-off doc
on, right, which is what changed it completely opened my eyes. It broadened my horizon completely on the subject matter, and I thought, this needs to be told. I never thought of this. And what it was, she showed me how if there's siblings, if there's other children in a household where there's someone that's autistic, a child that's autistic, and they have siblings, they generally get to be slightly ignored, in a sense, because a lot of the attention goes to the autistic child. And so these children end up having some problems. They feel abandoned or whatnot. So there's a lot of things that come up because they feel like they're raising themselves, or that they have to overcompensate because their parents are too focused on the autistic child. And I thought it was interesting because I never thought of that. And she said that a lot of times she started in the field to help out autistic children and ended up helping the ones that weren't and getting them the help that they needed, and ended up helping a lot of families. And she was hoping to expose that more. That way families can be aware that they need to make the scale even for all children in their household when there's an autistic child in the household, if that makes any sense. So I thought it was interesting, and I was like, I have to focus on that now, because I didn't. Yeah, it's I didn't think about that.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's it. Yeah. I didn't think about that at all.
And I think that's something to be said with any story across the medium, whether it's narrative or unscripted, is that we really I think we take for granted sometimes the power of film and TV, and that, you know, it's one of the greatest influences. And I think being able to utilize it correctly and in an impactful way, I think that's something that we have this incredible opportunity to do that. And I think that's something that, in kind of pivoting into the doc space, I realized was that, you know, you have this, it's a huge responsibility, but it's also something that is so powerful. And it's like, if we use it correctly, like, you really can make a difference, and you can change how people think about subjects and people and cultures, and, you know, and all across the board. And I feel very lucky that that collectively, you know, in the film community and TV community, like, that we have this opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Are there any subjects that you go after, or do they mainly come to you saying, hey, we'd like to do a documentary on this, or we'd like to do it on that? Is there anything that you're more geared towards? Do you have a list of, this is what I'd like to do, and after that I'd like to do this as well? How does it work for you?
So as far as finding the stories, with traveling and, you know, a lot of times solo, it kind of has forced me to meet and talk with a lot of people. And from traveling and taking the time to sit down and listen to stories and, you know, from cultures around the world, like, I feel like that's where the magic happens and the most interesting subjects come from. And so I think taking the time to meet with people and talk to them, you're guaranteed to find a story worth telling at some point. And I think, you know, even if that's, you know, reading articles, and, you know, a lot of that came from the narrative side, where you're, you know, constantly reading books and, you know, trying to get stories and ways to adapt different things. And but as far as documentaries, a lot of times, you know, it's, you know, you really have to do, you know, you're working on stories that you really care a lot about. And that's something that, you know, I think with any project, especially documentaries, just because it does take a lot of time, but, you know, working with subjects that you know, you're passionate about, and, like, the projects that really, like, set your soul on fire, and that you know, that keep you up at night, and ones that, you know, you jump out of bed in the morning to go make. So, I mean, whether it's friends of a friend that's like, oh, you know, I heard that you're interested in this, or, you know, I feel like I'm a multi-hyphenate hobbyist in a way that I have a lot of hobbies. And so I think that helps too, where it could be good and bad, where, you know, across the board, where projects that range from, you know, the board gaming industry through, you know, pageants and Miss America. So, you know, across the board, in environmental and political, and, you know, and unfortunately a lot of the projects that fall into my lap sometimes are ones that I care about. And then, you know, you get this, I think people have called it compassion fatigue, where you care too much about the projects that, you know, you get so exhausted that you care too much. But I think a lot of the time, you know, a lot of the stories just come from what you're interested in, which I think that just happens across the board. And, you know, even for writers and, you know, it's what drives you forward. You know, what are those stories that you feel like need to be told? Like, even with the autistic story, you know, it's like, these are the stories that you want people to hear. And, you know, that's what's going to get the project across the finish line in the end, because, you know, making a movie, you know, it's a marathon, you know, and it's going to take a lot of time and blood, sweat, and tears. And if you're not passionate about it, you know, who's going to be the one that's pushing it across the finish line in the end?
No, absolutely. What's the most recent project you worked on, or what do you have planned next?
So currently working on several projects. Okay. A lot of them are in, some of them are in development through post. But as far as, I don't know, there's a bunch, but the Nicaragua project specifically, that's in post-production. So on that one, so we were going into this community, the last tract of rainforest north of the Amazon, is home to several indigenous tribes that have been living off the land. And the government has been selling off the land to cattle ranchers who are illegally encroaching on the space. So, you know, a story that we've heard before. I mean, you know, as children, we knew that the rainforest was being cut down. But, you know, so on paper, this is kind of what we were working with, is that, these indigenous tribes are, kind of coming together to create a ranger program to push back against the cattle ranchers. So a kind of modernized cowboy and Indian story where you've got these indigenous tribes with their bow and arrows and their machetes, and they're standing up to these cattle ranchers with guns. And so it was a unique way going in, but it's interesting how going down there, on paper, it's, of course, the endangered species, that was the biggest concern is when they're cutting down the forest, you're having the red macaws, the giant anteaters, the tapirs, all these endangered species on the list are, at risk of being completely wiped out in this reserve area. But going down there and spending time with the people, it was like so apparent that this is what was at risk, was the people and their communities and their culture. And, they all speak different dialects down there, and they have a specific way of making their homes, and they wear their hair down to their knees, wear them in top knots, and just how they treat each other in their community. And really it was so eye-opening because that's what's going to be lost. It's the people. And it really took me to actually, leave my job and go down there, flying to the rainforest to really see that. And it was so much greater. And I feel like there's so many stories like that you just have to actually be exposed to them to really know what they're about. So that's one of the many projects. And that's why it's expanded. I think it's interesting how with documentaries and other stories, things come into play as they will. And so for that project specifically, I mean, we originally went in thinking it's just going to be for a Nicaraguan audience. But in the end, with Nicaragua, with the unrest happening in the country, and, and there's now a greater concern for the environment. And I think, had the film come out 2 years ago, maybe that would have been a little different. Maybe people wouldn't have taken note to something happening in Nicaragua or about the government or the environment. And especially, with the latest news on, climate change and all these things, it's like people are concerned and they want to know what they can do to help. And if it's something that we're doing in America on a daily basis that can indirectly help, the rainforest or, all these different communities, like we need to know about that. We need to know these stories. And I think that's so cool that stories will come into their own at different times or when they need to. And yes, documentaries take a little bit more time sometimes, but they'll eventually, they'll come into the light or, be done in, when they should. So.
No, absolutely. And it's true with the timing and everything. It does work out because it is interesting, for example, with the whole climate change and how some people don't think it's real. Ignoring it doesn't make it unreal or less real.
Exactly. Yeah.
But we have to face the facts and realities is that it is very much real and we are suffering consequences from it. And I'm glad that you're exposing it in this film, in this project, and I hope that continues with other projects as well.
Yeah, and I think that's something too, is just we have this ability to reach a lot of people through films and TV, and why not do it in a way where we can educate people at the same time as entertain?
Yeah, and documentary filmmaking is definitely that. In this entertainment industry is it's a great way to educate, and you have to be very creative with the way you do it so that you keep people involved and alert during the film. Of course, it's a storytelling that sets the pace. Does that make sense, Robin? Did it make sense what I was saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, it does. Yeah.
Because she made a face. I was just like, wait, is it making sense? Like, I want to make sure.
Yeah, no, I mean, I believe that this platform is communicative, and it's a lovely way of showcasing that because you're showing them visually, you're moving them with feelings, and then you're able to have, like, whether it's a voiceover or a story that's being told, verbally to them, it's still something that can move an emotion and evoke something in somebody to either be involved or to have a reaction. And that's the beauty of filmmaking, is that, it was originally made to have a reaction, whether it's, love, cry, hate,
anger, scare. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's the whole point of it, is like, if you're not reaching somebody to their core, then especially with documentaries, it's informative. It's something that's going to share knowledge of something that you may have scratched the surface of, but, like you said, diving deep into the Amazon forest. I mean, there's no better way than to actually to be there, is to like be engulfed in the culture and to understand their way of thinking, their way of life. And then as a filmmaker, you're able to express that because, you're being exposed. And then on top of that, you're living their life. That being adaptive and being sporadic, through your family history and the adventures that you went on as a kid with your sister and your parents. That's also, like, that's what made you just like throw that 9 to 5 out the window, which, some people can do that and some people can't.
Yeah.
So I find it really interesting that you went from narrative to documentary. I started in documentary and have almost done, all across the board commercials and TV and feature, and I thoroughly enjoy documentary. We're still wrapping up, a couple of docs that, are,
yeah.
are pretty, we started, I think, about 5 years ago on DJ Lala. She's a female underground hip hop DJ. And when we first met her, her story was, very much, I want to tour the world. I want to be so good that I tour the world, because I don't find a lot of female DJs out there. And, it's been 5 years, and guess what? She's on her 3rd or 4th tour in Europe right now. So, to see that progress and to see that hope and that drive and that passion and capturing it throughout those years, absolutely, documentary is a marathon.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So, those are the stories. Yeah.
But the cool thing, which I'm sure you've realized about that project, is how much it's evolved over time, and it's so fun to kind of ride with a project in that way.
We saw her get better as a DJ. We saw her practically from the beginning stages almost, and now she's, it's insane how much she has grown in her craft. It's
cool.
really great, and we got it all. We've captured it from the beginning.
Let me just tell you this: when we were capturing it, we started on tape.
Yeah.
and then went to digital.
Yes.
So that's kind of like,
my.
It's kind of funny. But at the same time, it's kind of nice also, because then it shows that growth, what I mean? So,
with us as filmmakers as well.
Right. Because nostalgia, like, oh, it's on tape. Like, what? So, the format has changed a little bit, but yeah, the progression of it was quite lovely. And just seeing that growth, and just the synergy between her and her craft and the people that are in and out of her life, and people that she's got to work with and people we've got to, collaborate with as well. So I think that's one of the exciting parts of filmmaking, is just you get to educate yourself in something that you're intrigued by or you're curious about. And
you did raise a good point, Robin. This was 5 years ago that we started. And when we met Lala was looking for female filmmakers at the time, because she was in a very male-dominant industry with the hip-hop underground music. And she wanted to feel like she can trust who she was with doing this documentary. So I thought that was really interesting. And that leads me to my question for you, Jennifer. How is it, what's the ratio like? Do you find that there is a good amount of females in the crew when you're doing these documentaries?
Yeah, when you're hiring out.
I mean, I think a lot of time it depends on the project, where, but sometimes it doesn't. I think that it doesn't matter across the board if you have a qualified, if someone is, the best person for the job,
yes.
I think whether it's female or male, I think there are certain projects that, we, on the project on Miss America, I think specifically we want to tell the story from a female voice. And for us, I think that was important to, have female members of the crew a part of the process. But I think it's, it ranges. I think there's talented individuals who are female and male in all roles across the board. And I think I feel very lucky when I get to work with females, but, at the same time, it's a run of the gamut. I feel like with documentaries where, a lot of times it's who's available to work when. Right. A lot of times it's so spontaneous and sporadic, but I've worked with males and female directors now, and I've enjoyed working with both.
I love that. Yeah, because that's really, not to lead you into that question, but yeah, I definitely am a firm believer of that. Is like, you should be hired on your merit. It's definitely that. I understand that we want to lift each other up as females, and I'm all about that, but it also comes down to, who do you want to be on set with? Are they good at what they do? And are they available? Because like, I want to work on something that, have I done this before? Or am I interested in this? How am I going to invest my time? Because you're on set for like 10, 12 hours, so you want to be around people that, are likable and can have a similar conversation, or, see things and just spark that community. When you're only thinking of just one thing, sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't. Obviously personalities are all around the board. So I think depending on what your content is, definitely something that you look at as well.
I think my perspective, or what I'm trying to say, is it's great to know that there are females that can fill certain crew spots that it wasn't always like that, because it was a very dominant, male dominant. Because Robin, last week you touched on how you were at the time one of the very few lady electricians on set, and now you see more. And so I think that's what's fantastic about how things are evolving now in this industry, and how females are coming out more and saying like, hey, I do this too. You can hire me for this. And we could also base it on that merit as well. But it's just good to know that across the board on different crew, there are various females in different crews. I'm not sure if I'm...
I don't think that is really any more of an issue, really. I think that there's enough validation from ourselves to be able to say, yeah, I'm interested in doing this. I feel like absolutely there's been a shift. I feel like we're not going to see numbers because it takes time to see growth. But there is a movement of having that. We have more role models in key positions showing us, because before there used to be, I noticed that there's a lot more female producers for sure. Yeah. And I was like, oh, this is cool. But, we didn't have access to having more, more exposure.
That's the point. The access is knowing that the exposure.
There now. Yeah. Don't you agree, Jennifer? Like, I feel like there's it's a right now, and within the last year and a half, 2 years, there's definitely been a shift. There's definitely been a movement. You can see that on set. There is that option. It's very much been made aware. It's just more of who's doing the hiring and who's good and who's available. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And I think that, with any job, it's like, well, what are the jobs? I think across the board, I definitely feel that as far as this feeling of empowerment and with this movement. And I think it's so cool. And I hope that it rides on longer, than a few years. But, I'd worked on a project earlier this year, and it was a full female crew. And we all took a moment and we're like, we need to take a picture. Like, we need to, remember this moment that it was a full female crew. And it was really cool. And it was empowering to think, that it was every job across the board was female. And that was really cool to see. And, I hadn't, I was on a narrative project, and I being on documentaries, it's a little different, but it was cool to see that, I hadn't seen females in a lot of the roles, as you were saying, it's like electric, and, there was just, I hadn't been exposed to that side, and it was really empowering. I mean, not that there didn't exist before, as you just were saying, but I think there's definitely something churning, you know, with women in different roles, and you know, especially with the Female Filmmaker Friday, and you know, if you don't see it, like, you don't know it exists, or you know, those different roles, and I think that's really cool that's been going on, and you know, and you're exposing the greater world to all these jobs that you didn't know existed, and I think that's, you know, that's the positive side of this movement.
Oh, absolutely. And I think too, like we're having our second annual festival, November 1st and 2nd. And on Thursday, the opening night, we have a panel of women from both sides of the, you know, above and below the line, which is lovely because we've also invited, you know, local colleges and students and filmmakers to be out there because we want everybody to meet each other. We want everyone to network. We want to lift each other up and just keep with that movement, because you're right. If you don't see it, sometimes it's kind of like, oh, that's, you know, I didn't realize I had access to this person. I didn't realize that I could have, you know, I could fill the slot just as easily as if it was, you know, who's the best person, and whether it's male or female, it doesn't matter. But at the same time, if you're seeing that there's, oh, look I have a key position and it's female, oh, there's a key position, or there's an assistant position, or whatever, or second, whatever it is, we now have an abundance of resource in our arsenal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well said.
Yes. No, I mean, you're coming back to LA. I hope you're here in LA the 1st and the 2nd. We can swing by. We can meet you face to face. I mean,
oh my gosh, I would love to.
Yeah,
I will be there.
Yeah,
yes.
there's been such a great response that I'm hoping that like all of us can just like
it's a good
build
turnout.
something. Yeah, and we've been doing a lot of cross promotion with other female filmmaker groups, you know, across the board.
I think that's what's important too.
Yes, is getting that network in and just keep cross promoting and build each other up, because you know, I mean, all across the board, that's all we all want. We just want to be creative, and we just want to tell our story, and why not do it by helping somebody else?
Yeah, it's like last week we had our guest was a Women Weekend Film Challenge, and they're going to be coming to LA for the first time next year.
Yeah, they're based in New York.
And it was so great to hear what they're doing and how they approach it and how they've grown, because it was the second time they're doing it, and the third time they're going to do it is in LA. So it's really great that this has come out, that we're, like what Robin said and what you've touched on is how we're exposing it more, and that's the most important part. It's the exposure.
Yeah.
And then continuing that with the support.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And I think even with all the Facebook groups, I mean, I think I get notifications every day from female in film, you know, filmmaking groups where they're like, hey, I'm looking for an editor. I'm looking for sound, or, you know, and people are commenting, and it's like everyone's putting each other up for jobs. And it's like, this is what we should be doing. We should be helping each other and talking to one another. And, you know, I think that support system has only grown from, you know, over the last year, like with the movement and things. And I think it's so refreshing that you can reach out to a group of women and say, hey, I'm looking for, you know, an AE, and they're like, this is the best female AE I know, and, you know, just recommending. And I think it's so great that that's happening.
Yes. And then that's the energy that we want, is just, you want to meet somebody you want to work with. Here's somebody new. If you haven't tried them, oh, I'm not available, I can recommend this person and this person and this person. And it just keeps on going. So if we keep doing that, like, imagine. Yeah.
Absolutely. So what would you say, just to swing back on the documentary filmmaking portion of it, what advice would you give to someone that's just starting out?
I think, starting out in the documentary space, or just in general?
As a producer, if they're interested, you know, if we have listeners that are interested in being a producer, because we've had, you know, a bunch of ladies on the show that are, you know, stunt coordinator, directors, actors, voice, everything. So to listen to a producer, what advice would you give to our listeners?
I think the advice would be to find your tribe, find the people that you like working with. I think that's essential to, you know, especially in the independent space. You know, if you're, as a producer, you're going to be hiring out a lot of the crew. And I think that's important, is to find the directors and the team that you like working with. And but I think also, as far as really finding the projects that you want to be working on, I think that's really important, because again, it's a marathon to get a film across the finish line, and you want to be working on the projects that you want to work on. And I think finding that passion project, or just surrounding yourself with the people you want to work with and the projects and the subjects that set your soul on fire, and go after it. And I think that's something where I think a lot of times, in the documentary space, there's been a lot of projects I've worked on that we start off great and it's going, and then, the story shifts, and then the project isn't the same as it was, and the film ends, and I think that's something where you can't be afraid to fail. And I think that's something that's hard for people, is to, just go out and try to work on the projects that you want to work on. And if they don't work out, there's going to be other projects. But I think putting yourself out there and really pushing and challenging yourself, I think that's the advice I was given, is that, if you find something that you want to work on, like, go after it and try to be on it, or try to work on it. And, and hopefully, you'll have the right team to get it across the finish line. But I think you have to just try, or you'll regret not doing it. So I think that was the greatest advice that I was given on a lot of the projects.
That's pretty cool. So have you ever mentored anyone or been mentored?
I have, and I've done a bit of mentoring, but I'd love to be more involved in that. I think, especially with women filmmakers, I think that would be such a great tool for people, because I think when I first moved to LA, I really was, trying to figure out what path to go and what I was supposed to be doing. And I think, having people to talk to and, at least help guide you in some direction, whether it's the right one or not, I think that that's so helpful, especially with more people that are more experienced. And I think that's something that I hope to find in LA is, that type of community where you can mentor people or be mentored vice versa. Because there's so many times where, there's not one set path in this industry. It's not like you get this one job and you become this, or, there's so many ups and downs and which ways and sideways. And, I think having someone to be able to talk to and, kind of bounce ideas off of, and, from more experienced people, I think would be really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I wanted to go back to what you were saying with your advice. I'm someone that I struggle with low self-esteem, and it takes me a lot to try to talk myself up to doing things. And so doing this show helps having that mentality, ironically, because then I can share that perspective to others that have the same issues. I totally get what you're saying, where it's important to find the right group of people to work with. And it's a learning process, obviously, because sometimes, you're sometimes sort of stuck with some people on a set, and then you figure out what works and what doesn't, and then you learn from that and say, this is what I'm going to take away from it. So on to the next project, I know who I would like to continue working with, or if I have to bring certain people back, I know how to approach it, where I know how to deal with it. If there was any issues personally or professionally speaking. So I totally understand that advice, because for someone like myself that has that issue with low self-esteem and I have to talk myself up a lot, I get that, because there's times where I don't feel like, I feel like giving up, because I'm just like, I'm not moving anywhere. Like, this isn't going anywhere. Like, I don't belong in this industry. And then there's times where I'm like, but I love it. So I have to figure out how to do what I need to do to continue and talk myself up in a way, and it's weird because a lot of it, and I know it's such an ugly word, ego, but you have to have a little bit of it so that you can boost yourself up. so that you can hear that you're doing something right and say, okay, then I have some sort of worth. So it works. And having the right team, having the right support is essential with that, you know? And
yeah. And I think in doing so, I mean, I think there's so many, one advice I would give other females in the industry is there's so many female groups. And, you know, I have a monthly group that I meet with, and everyone, you know, talks about what they're doing. And, you know, at the end, we say one thing that we'd like to get. And
did her.
Oh,
wait.
We lost you, Jennifer.
Oh, are you there?
Yeah, we're yeah.
You just said
Okay.
you meet, and there's one thing that you say.
And then we lost what you said. I thought it was just like, that's it. That's all you say. You didn't say anything. So there's one thing that you say. What is that?
So in one thing, it's just, you know, finding those communities where, I mean, whether it's meeting with friends monthly or just the communities where you feel comfortable to be able to ask for help, but also, you know, support and give your services to other people. And so that's one of the things in a few of the groups that I'm in where at the end, you know, you have an ask and you also will provide. So if you're saying, oh, I'm looking for an editor, but I can provide services in this area, or I can help connect you with someone. And so it's
sort of
it's
like a
really
barter.
Beautiful. It's a great group where, you know, you feel and it's comfortable and everyone supports everyone. And I think that's such a big thing is finding that support system because, you know, across the board, you know, in this group, we've got women that are stand-up comedians through filmmakers. And, you know, whenever anyone has a screening or a gig or something, everyone goes and supports them. And I think you need to have that in order to thrive in the industry. And I think that's something that I would definitely advise is to find those groups. And there's so many. And if anyone needs group advice, like they can be sent my way because I have many.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. I mean, off the top of your head, can you give us like a couple of these support groups that you know, with other women in the industry that you meet with?
Well, WIMPS is one. It's Women in Motion Picture Science. It's the unscripted branch of that. There's also, I know there's for directors, the Femme Fatale group.
Yes.
But there's also there's so many. If you go on Facebook, there's tons and tons of female groups. But yeah, I think that's something that's really important. And you know, a lot of these groups I joined, you know, without knowing anybody, and you know, over the years, you grow to have these friendships and this community that's really supportive. And I think you need that in LA, especially.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Absolutely.
definitely, yeah. Because you know, like it's such a fast moving city, and you know, it's a small world essentially. You end up bumping into people like I just bumped into somebody on a show that I hadn't seen in 3 years. I was like, oh, hey, how's it going? I haven't seen you in 3 years. You look good. Oh, what are you doing? Okay, great. And we just caught up after 3 years on set. It was like, oh, okay. You know, I mean, that's bound to happen.
Yeah.
You know, the longer you know, and you have some familiar faces and you have some support, which is really awesome. But yeah, I definitely think that's one resource that you can utilize. And you know, I'm going to say I don't have one of those yet, but I am super interested. I mean, I'd love to have a group of just support. You know, like how did this go, and what advice would you give me? Like if if you were in this scenario, how would you do this? Or you know, it'd be great.
I want to start. I want to start a group that's like women in film, but a hiking group. And so every weekend we'll go on a hike, and you know, it's something where you're actually doing something active, but also I think for me, you know, with hiking, it's, you know, the industry, it's so hard to finish things and complete things. And it's like you have that weekend, a sense of accomplishment, but also it's a way to, you know, catch up with people and also kind of prep your mind mentally for the week.
That's amazing.
Jennifer, I am so down. We're doing this. That's it.
Okay.
We're doing this.
We're starting it.
We're starting it. That's it.
I like it.
It's official. We talked about it on the podcast. We're starting this.
There's also, you know,
it's official. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that'd be rad. I mean, if you really think about it, like everybody in LA seems to, I mean, especially in the industry, like you have to be active because, you don't have time, or at least I don't have time.
Yeah.
You really don't.
Yeah.
You really don't. Yeah.
It's hard. I mean, like my one reward to myself is going to the dog beach with my pup and we run for like 2 hours.
Yeah.
Like that's like my zen. That's my, reboot of life. Like that one day a week that I get to do that. Not enough.
Right. No, that is not enough. So we're unfortunately have to wrap things up here.
No, it's okay.
But I do want to see you. I hope you do come by November 1st at the panel, because it would be so great to see you. And then chat some more, and then we can plan out this hike because it's happening.
Oh, yeah, I love
it. I will create it, and I will send you guys invites to be admins.
Yes, awesome. Please do. And then please tell everyone where they can find you, social media, website, whatever you want to share, and if there's any projects you have out there that we can find online or in the theaters, whatever you want to share.
Yes, absolutely. So I'm Jennifer Tocquigny on Facebook, and then Fleur de Gigi is my Instagram. But for projects, Saving Miss America, it's a documentary on Miss America. It's on Facebook and Instagram as well, but also Game Master, the film. That's a documentary on board games. And so that can also be found on Instagram.
Awesome. Very, very cool. Thank you so much. So thanks, Robin, again, for hosting with me today.
No, thank you for having me.
Thank you guys for having
Jennifer,
me.
no, thank you. I always thank the guests last because I want to praise you for what you're doing. So thank you for what you're doing. I'm so glad that you had such an amazing life where you got to travel and it made you the person that you are, and you're sharing it here with us today. So thank you, and I hope you continue that journey. And I look forward to meeting you in person.
Yes, me too.
Absolutely. I can't wait to meet you guys.
Yes. All right, my lovely. You have a great rest of your week.
Yes, and everyone have a
safe.
Have a safe Sunday, everyone.
You're listening to Female Filmmakers Fuse with Alexa Polar, only on LA Talk Radio.